I've just found something mega. It could be a really good one. Have a look. I just cracked open the edge off this big nodule, and then inside you can see where there's been an ammonite which is broken, but underneath you can see a big ammonite keel. There might be a few more in there. I'll have to be really gentle with it.
Let's have a look and see.
I did not expect that to be in there at all. The nodule's so tough as well. It looks like there's actually a natural fracture, which means that the ammonite itself might break into two, but at least then it'll be a more manageable size for us to take home. That natural crack's just started to go through the ammonite, so if I just gently tap this, hopefully that breaks off and we'll be able to see the cross section of the ammonite itself. Can we see anything? We see a little partial piece there.
I think it's just a partial.
Oh no, I really hope it isn't. I might have to try and break a little piece off this way. I really hope it's there. It is, it's just a crushed keel. Oh no way. there's a tiny one there, but it doesn't make up for the excitement I had thinking that was going to be complete. So I mean, at least we've got a tiny one. It's a nice consolation prize. Never mind, it was worth it just on the off chance. That's what it's all about, the thrill of the hunt. We've just been searching in amongst some of these huge slabs and we've managed to find the giant Jurassic poo. So let's dig it out of this slab and see how big it is. I'm just starting quite far away from the poo itself because usually they're quite fragile. You can see there it's quite a sizable lump. Working my way around the shale just to try and loosen it up a little bit. Yeah, the shale's breaking away from the edges. Quite often the poo is relatively mushy, so it might not come up in one lump. I've actually managed to get it on a slab, which isn't too bad. Just try and loosen it a bit more. See, there's some small fractures, but that'll give us a little cross section of what the poo looks like on the inside. See there, all the soft brown material, and that looks like it's nipped off just there. Cool, there we go. See a little bit more of the cross section there. There's actually a ammonite imprint on the underside of this poo as well. You can see there it's pyritized, so presumably many years ago there's been an ammonite laid on the sea floor, and then this Jurassic poo's washed up against it. Very nice, if you like fossils. There's a huge Jurassic nodule down here. Let's split it out and crack it open. There we are, looks nice and round. It wasn't completely empty. It's not a big ammonite, but you can see some really small gracile ammonites. So that ammonite. This slab down here contains a huge nodule. Hopefully it contains a fossil, but we won't know for sure until we crack it open. I'm just breaking away some of the softer shale from the nodule itself. Oh yeah, come and have a look from this side. It's a really big nodule. That's immense. The ledge piece of the nodule's actually come loose. But yeah, there's a shell there, and then this here looks like it might have been a much larger ammonite that's crushed. We'll flip this over, we might get a better look. Oh, wow, look at that. Oh, there's been a really big Harpoceros ammonite on the surface. Hopefully, there's a more 3D example further inside. Nothing on this surface bit here. Might have to try and break this piece off. Still nothing. We managed to break off that surface, and underneath there was actually a huge partial piece of a Litoceros, which from the upper Lias is particularly rare. In this piece here, you could see a small section of a Litoceros, which is obviously the Litoceros centre. And as you can see, the keel was much larger and then hasn't been preserved. And as you continue to go underneath, we've actually got complete Litoceros. So cool. We split it just because we didn't know if there was actually going to be a full centre or whether it was just a little whirl. So if we keep both these pieces, we'll be able to glue it together and prep it, and this will definitely be one for the collection. That is so cool.
This fossil that we found during our fossil hunt is now back in the workshop. It is a large Litoceros ammonite. We have already glued it back together, and you can see some residual pieces of glue which we will be gradually removing as we prepare this specimen. It was quite surreal when we opened up an enormous boulder to find a really unusual large ammonite, which, if it turns out to be fully three-dimensional and fully intact, will definitely become part of our fossil ammonite collection. Using the air pneumatic tools, we begin by moving much of the limestone, and when we get closer and closer to the fossil itself, we can use even finer and finer pneumatic pens to remove smaller and smaller pieces of stone. At this point, we've already spent several hours preparing the fossil. You can see here, millimetre by millimetre, we remove further pieces of glue away from the ammonite shell itself. This is a very delicate and nerve-wracking process, as you might imagine. Due to all of the dust created whilst preparing fossils, it's of course very important to wear appropriate safety gear within the workshop, such as tools for protecting your eyes, such as the eye mask that our dad is currently wearing, as well as making sure that you don't inhale any of the dust either. Lots and lots of tiny pieces of stone are frequently flying off in all directions. That's another reason that you need eye protection. We can now see the outer edge of much of the ammonite is already starting to emerge from the rock. Just think if we hadn't opened that boulder and it had just gotten washed out to sea, this fossil would have never ever seen the light of day. It's such a privilege to be able to save specimens such as this and preserve them for the rest of time. At this point in the preparation process, it's looking really positive that more and more of the ammonite is preserved as we go deeper and deeper into the rock. It is surprisingly common to get all the way to the middle of the ammonite and find out that it is not preserved fully, but we're looking pretty good so far. Look how impressive this 180 million year old ammonite is looking already. It's so exciting, spending a few hours each day preparing this fossil. This fossil was actually prepared over several months. We did most of the preparation within the first few days after finding the specimen, and then we had to put it to one side in order to carry on with some other projects, which we have been showing you bits and pieces of on the channel already. However, now we have picked the fossil back up, and in this video you are going to see the fully finished example of this specimen. We can't wait to show you the rest of this preparation footage and for you to then see the finished fossil itself. You can see there a little bit more of the eye protection that we are wearing, and as you might be able to notice, they actually also act as a small amount of magnification to be able to see closer up to the specimen to ensure that we are being as careful as possible. We do also now have a fossil microscope to allow even more precise preparation. This is without a doubt the most nerve-wracking part of the process. It's that time when we find out whether or not the fossil is fully preserved and whether it is distorted or not. And then the added challenge of removing rock from the most delicate part of the fossil. I think we've lost count now of the amount of times that we have prepared such a specimen, only to find it's not fully intact, and we've had to, unfortunately, abandon the preparation of it. However, this one is shaping up to be quite the special find indeed. If the middle of the Ammonite wasn't preserved, it is possible to make a mould and make the fossil look as though it's complete. If we ever do this, we always let people know that we have just done it to highlight what the fossil would have looked like. But with this one, it doesn't look like we're going to need to. Now that we've removed much of the stone, we're actually able to transfer it to one of the fossil stone saws and remove some of the excess limestone surrounding it and shape the overall piece. There was a small bit of damage there where we opened the rock, so we are just restoring that. And here you go. Let's take it to the saw and cut it down a little bit more. First up, we'll just mark whereabouts we are going to reduce that excess limestone from around the edges. This is of course quite a dangerous part of the process, so you have to be really careful. Even though we are just trimming off small amounts of stone at a time, it's very precise and gives really clean edges, and we can also cut a base for the Ammonite to be able to stand up on. So it serves for aesthetic reasons as well as functional. The final part of preparing this fossil is to smooth off some of that limestone matrix, and we should be just about finished. And let's take a look at the finished result. Get a look at that. From that enormous boulder of bulky limestone, this fossil is now fully prepared. I love the way that our dad has hollowed out the mouth border to really show off just how well preserved and three-dimensional this Lithoceros ammonite is. This is one of our largest examples of this species of ammonite. The shell of the fossil is also intact all the way to the centre, and our dad has removed all of the limestone so you can see every single detail. What an epic find. That's the end of our fossil hunt now. Thanks for watching.
And we'll see you in the next one.